I think the Minority Chief Whip will lead us to recite the National Pledge.
It is my honor to be faithful and loyal to God.
I pledge myself in all my strength, in all my heart. I promise to hold in high esteem our heritage won for us through the blood and toil of our fathers. And I pledge myself in all things to uphold and defend the good name of Ghana. So help me God.
Thank you so much. Honorable members, I don't have a message from His Excellency the President. I have formal communication to make. Formal communication is in the form of a statement on the compliance by honorable members, ministers, and deputy ministers with the provision of our Constitution and the standing orders of this House. Honorable members, it has become a practice that members of Parliament, ministers and deputy ministers accept appointments to various boards, committees, and external positions, many of which carry remuneration or other benefits, without seeking the permission of the Speaker, as required by the Constitution and the standing orders of Parliament. Beyond these appointments, there is also a growing pattern of members actively engaging in private business ventures and professional undertakings that raise legitimate concerns about interference with the proper discharge of their public functions, prejudice the work, and also cause potential conflicts of interest. While some of these appointments may be validly made by operation of law or arise from constitutional designation, a significant number fall outside these narrow exceptions. This trend, if left unchecked, risks eroding the ethical standards of public service, weakening parliamentary oversight, and compromising the credibility of Parliament in the eyes of the public. The time has come to restate, apply, and give effect to the rules, affirm the institutional safeguards, and take the necessary steps to restore full compliance with both the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. The Constitution is clear on this matter. Article 98 of the Constitution is a constitutional imperative. Article 98(1) provides, and I quote, "A member of Parliament shall be paid such salary and allowances and provided with such facilities as may be determined in accordance with Article 71 of this Constitution. And 98(2) provides, I quote, "A member of Parliament shall be paid such salary and allowances and provided with such facilities as may be determined Sorry, there's a repeat of 98(1). There's a repeat of 98(1). I read 98(2). A member of Parliament shall not hold any office of profit or emolument, whether private or public, and either directly or indirectly, unless permitted to do so by the Speaker, acting on the recommendations of a committee of Parliament on the grounds that A, holding that office will not prejudice the work arises or would arise as a result of the member holding the office, unquote. Similarly, Article 78(3) applies the same restrictions to ministers and deputy ministers of state. And it states, I quote, "A minister of state shall not hold any other office of profit or emolument, whether private or public, and whether directly or indirectly, unless otherwise provided by the Speaker, acting on the recommendations of the Committee of Parliament on the ground, A, that holding the office will not prejudice the work of a minister, and B, that no conflict of interest arises or would arise as a result of the minister holding that office." Clause 79(3) applies the above Article 78(3) to a deputy minister as it applies to a minister of state. To give effect to these provisions, Order 224 of the Standing Orders of Parliament establishes the Committee on Office of Profit, chaired by the Second Deputy Speaker, to compose of up to 14 additional members. The committee is mandated to advise the Speaker on members, ministers, and deputy ministers who seek to be permitted to hold office of profit or emolument, whether private or public, and either directly or indirectly on the grounds that satisfy the constitutional conditions as stated under Article 78(3) of the Constitution. The Speaker's discretion under Article 78(3) and 98(2) is not personal or arbitrary. It is exercised on the basis of recommendations from the committee, and only where the constitutional tests have been met. The framework is therefore mandatory and structured, not discretionary or optional. No member or minister may self-interpret compliance or act on the assumption that failure to comply with the procedure or silence amounts to approval by the Speaker. These provisions form part of Ghana's broader constitutional safeguards to preserve the independence of Parliament, protect public confidence in its members and ministers, and prevent undue influence by limiting divided loyalties, conflicts of interest, and private inducements. Honorable members, these provisions must be observed faithfully. The restrictions placed on members of Parliament and ministers of state from holding offices of profit or emolument in addition to their official duties are rooted in long-established constitutional principles. These rules exist to ensure technical compliance and, I repeat, to protect the integrity of public office, preserve institutional independence, and guard against the corrosive effects of conflict of interest. The underlying rationale is simple. Public office must be held in undivided service to the state. Where a person charged with legislative or executive responsibility accepts another position that offers personal benefit, whether financial or otherwise, it becomes necessary to examine whether such dual engagement undermines their official obligations or introduces the risk of divided loyalty. These principles are not unique to Ghana. They reflect long-standing practice in Westminster-style parliamentary systems. In the United Kingdom, from which much of Ghana's parliamentary architecture is drawn, the concept of office of profit has historically served as a mechanism to prevent members of parliament from being beholden to the executive or from deriving personal gain in ways that compromise parliamentary independence. Under UK law, members who accept offices of profit that are not expressly exempted are disqualified from sitting in the House of Commons. The system is rigidly enforced, even to the extent that resignation from Parliament is effected by appointment to a nominal office of profit, since members of Parliament may not otherwise vacate their seats. In Ghana's case, the framers of the Constitution incorporated similar controls. Article 78.3 and 98.2, as mentioned supra, together with the standing orders, are designed to preserve the constitutional balance between the legislature and the executive, avoid undue influence, and maintain the trust reposed in members by the electorate. These provisions ensure that ministers and members of Parliament do not convert public service into a platform for personal wealth accumulation, nor use their positions to gain undue advantage in the private sector or state institutions. The rule also serves a practical purpose. The work of a minister or member of Parliament is demanding and time-consuming. In the case of Ghana, members of Parliament are full-time employees. There are jurisdictions where members of Parliament are part-time employees. Some are even seen as casuals, not employees of the state. And so, the effect of the provisions in Ghana are even more telling. Holding additional appointments, especially those with financial or executive obligations, raises legitimate concerns about whether such individuals can adequately perform their primary duties. Where these duties are accepted without scrutiny or oversight, there is the additional risk that state boards, corporate entities, or regulatory agencies become politicized and accountability mechanisms are compromised or weakened, or both. In requiring prior approval, the Constitution ensures that such concerns are considered openly and resolved objectively through a transparent process anchored in parliamentary oversight. The prohibition against holding an office of profit or emolument applies broadly. It covers any position, appointment, or role that confers financial benefit or material advantage on a member of parliament, minister, or deputy minister, whether in the public or private sector, and whether held directly or through an intermediary. This includes, but is not limited to, the following. Minority leader, either you listen to me or you go with your group and whisper outside. When you finish, you come back. A, membership of boards of public corporations, statutory bodies, or state-owned enterprises where the appointment is not by express provision of law. B, service on private corporate boards, foundations, non-governmental organizations, or international bodies where the role carries financial or reputational benefit. C, consultancy, legal, technical, or advisory roles that are remunerated or likely to influence official conduct. And D, executive or managerial functions in any business venture, including those managed through proxies or nominees. There are, however, limited and well-defined exceptions. These include A, instances where the Constitution itself authorizes a minister or member to hold a particular office. B, appointments that arise automatically by operation of law. For example, ministerial oversight functions that confer ex officio board membership under statute, or members of parliament serving on the Parliamentary Service Board and its committees. C, nominations that arise from Parliament and its leadership of members to statutory boards. And D, internal parliamentary duties or committees that form part of the institutional structure of the House. Beyond these narrow categories, all other appointments or engagements must receive prior approval from the Speaker, acting on the advice of the Committee on Office of Profit, as I said, chaired by the second Deputy Speaker. Members are not at liberty to determine for themselves whether a given role is exempt or permissible. Despite the clarity of the constitutional and procedural requirements, I have noted with concern that a number of members of Parliament and some ministers and deputy ministers have accepted appointments as a practice to various boards, advisory roles, and external offices of profit without seeking or obtaining the required prior permission of the House, this has to be discontinued or righted. Equally troubling is the observation that several members continue to engage in private professional activity or commercial ventures that raise questions about compatibility of such engagement with their public responsibilities. These developments point to a worrying disregard of the Constitution and the standing orders of the House. While the Speaker acknowledges that some appointments may have been made under misapprehension or without ill intent, the situation nonetheless requires immediate corrective action. Accordingly, all members, ministers, and deputy ministers currently holding any office or profit or emolument not expressly authorized by law or not under any exemption outlined above are hereby directed to take steps to regularize these positions without delay. Any such member shall, within 14 days from the date of this communication, submit to the Committee on Office or Profit, a formal request for approval in accordance with the procedure set out under Standing Order 224. The request shall disclose the nature of the appointment, the duties involved, any remuneration attached, and any other matter necessary for a full assessment by the Committee on Office or Profit. I further direct the Committee on Office or Profit to treat this matter with urgency. The committee shall receive and review all requests for ratification promptly and submit the recommendations to me for determination. In the course of its work, the committee is reminded to apply the constitutional test strictly and consistently, ensuring that no recommendation is made unless the conditions under Article 78.3 and 98.2 are fully satisfied. Moving forward, the Speaker shall enforce strict compliance with the constitutional and procedural requirements. No member, minister, or deputy minister shall accept or retain any office or profit or emolument without first obtaining the required permission. Any breach of this directive will constitute a serious violation of the Constitution. Silence, oversight, or informality shall not be accepted as a substitute for compliance. The House cannot afford to compromise on the principles of public trust, accountability, and institutional integrity. It is the duty of every public officer to ensure that their conduct does not call into question the credibility of the offices they hold. The Speaker calls on all members to lead by example and to adhere strictly to the standards expected of them under the Constitution and the standing orders of Parliament. I further call on all professional associations, trade, or otherwise, where members have the opportunity to practice, to hold the members accountable, and insist that the permission of the Speaker be exhibited and shown before the member is permitted to practice or continue to hold that office or profit or emolument. Honorable members, this directive takes immediate effect. I mean, the 14 days rule that have just been stated, within which members have to comply with the procedure, starts from today. 14 days from today. Those of you who have been offered these opportunities, you have to go through the procedure. 14 days from today. And until you receive the certificate from the Speaker, you are prohibited from continuing to hold any office of profit or emoluments. With this, I thank you for your attention, and may the good Lord continue to bless all of us. Thank you so much. I will give permission for your leaders to make comments on this. As I said, it's a statement from the Speaker. If you so wish, you are not compelled. And so I'll start with the minority leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to make some comments on the statement you've just made. Mr. Speaker, I believe that the essence of this statement from you is to sanitize the whole process of members having to engage in some other activity. Mr. Speaker, whereas I am clear on my mind regarding members holding office of profit, a requirement for the committee chaired by the second deputy speaker to provide some exemption to enable the member practice his or her profession. I'm clear on my mind on that one. Regarding a deputy minister or a minister of state or a member of parliament sitting on a public board, that in all humility, I think I may have some disagreement with Right Honorable Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, these are views you've expressed, and I also hold the view that to the extent that you have made reference to the Constitution, perhaps, as you said, we all express views on the Constitution. Perhaps we may have to test the law on this particular matter, because my reading of the Constitution and our standing orders, it appears that the intendment is aimed at looking at those other activities that are undertaken by members outside of this house, but for profit. So I'm a lawyer, I go to court, and it is expected that I have to exhibit that warrant or that certificate which exempts me. But if I'm a member of this house and say I'm appointed as the chair of the premix board, or I'm appointed to the road fund as a board chair, or to the ECG board. Mr. Speaker, my very humble view, and I so humbly express that, and I do so modestly, Mr. Speaker, is that to the extent that that is a public board, it is not for profit. Because It is part of that public service that you are delivering. However, there is also another argument that if you go to such board, you may be earning some allowance, some emoluments are there. So the argument could be that still you will need the permission of the speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, as for the arguments, they may be very divergent and very diverse, but like I said earlier, the appropriate forum to give a determination to this matter is the Supreme Court. Mr. Speaker, not to bring my own matter here, but I recall somewhere 2015, there was this debate in Winneba where the highways, Ghana Highway Authority official was contesting for the chairmanship of the NDC constituency party. And then an officer of GES was also contesting as a secretary for the NDC. And we argued and argued and argued. Eventually, I decided to test the law at the Supreme Court, invoking the appropriate constitutional provision, which says that certain category of public service or civil servants are not supposed to be part of the partisan discourse. Mr. Speaker, I was shocked when the Supreme Court eventually made a determination and said, well, to the extent that certain category of public servants were not listed in the provision I had invoked, I cannot imply that they must be part of it. So we should restrict ourselves to only those who have been listed in that provision, which stops those category of persons from being part of the partisan discourse of our democracy. Mr. Speaker, as a result of that, officers of state-owned institutions, officers of GES have been part of the politics, whereas somebody from the Ministry of Education is not qualified by the Constitution. Somebody at the Ghana Education Service is able to, and it goes on and on and on. So, Mr. Speaker, for now, we have to yield in obedience to your directive. However, if you are open to further discussion on this matter, I may want to suggest that Mr. Speaker may place the aspect of his directive that relate to public institutions on ice for us to test the law. It will be part of the democratic discourse. Why not? Mr. Speaker, I shall yield to my respected colleague, the majority leader, to have his bite on this matter. That is all I have for now, with the opportunity given me. Thank you, sir.
Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, I'm one of those that agree with you that we must do all in our power to strengthen Parliament. And in doing that, we must ensure that we have parliamentarians that will be independent-minded and will faithfully scrutinize executive action and ensure that the good people of this country get value for money, which is the investments that they make in us as members of Parliament. Indeed, some time ago, I used to share your position very strongly that members of Parliament should not be serving on boards, because I thought that it compromised members of Parliament. Until somebody drew my attention to the fact that we have ministers who are also members of Parliament. If we do have ministers who are members of parliament, who are in the executive, then the argument that a member of parliament serving on a board, which is even a lower category than a minister, compromises that member, falls flatly on his face. And so, Mr. Speaker, I abandoned that position and yielded to the posture where members of parliament can be appointed to serve on boards. If members of parliament can be made ministers of state, if they can be made deputy ministers of state, and when they are ministers of state and deputy ministers of state, they can also statutorily serve as members of boards or even chair some boards, then it becomes difficult to hold on to a position that other colleague members of parliament who have not become ministers of state or deputy ministers of state cannot serve in a subsidiary organization of a ministry, which is a board under a ministry or some state-owned enterprise. And so I, honestly, Mr. Speaker, have abandoned my position that members of parliament cannot serve on boards, both statutory and state-owned boards. But Mr. Speaker, I think that we must, in doing this, be mindful of not placing people in positions where they will be compromised. Their position as board members, their position as board members or even chairpersons will compromise them and make it impossible for them to exercise scrutiny and oversight. Mr. Speaker, it might be the case that having members on these boards will enhance the boards, will strengthen the boards, will make the boards more efficient, because there are members here who are very capable, very competent, and when they serve on boards can really offer leadership. And this country will be deprived of that leadership if we hold on to a strict position that members should not serve on boards or chair boards. Mr. Speaker, I agree with you that whatever the case, the Constitution is clear and our standing orders are also clear on the requirement to apply to the Office of Profit Committee for you to approve the occupancy of these board chairmanship or board membership positions. So, Speaker, I think members are already applying, and I recall last week some members approached me to urge the chairperson of that committee to start sitting. And I'm told that this morning the committee actually started sitting, and members have started submitting applications to the committee. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, in the case of membership of boards, it will be difficult for a member to know whether or not he will be on a board and then apply to the committee ahead of time for approval to then go and occupy that board. It is almost impossible to know whether you will be on a board or not. So I think that consistent with what we have done in this House, being ingenious and innovative in enforcing our standing orders, such as we have done when it came to the Subsidiary Legislation Committee, where we consider allies before they are late. Mr. Speaker, pre-laying arrangement that we have in this House, in the case of members who are on boards, we may waive or we may ignore the requirement of prior approval of your committee before they occupy those boards. And like we have done in the case of statutory legislation, if the member is appointed by the president, then the member can apply to the committee for the committee to then provide clearance, and then the process will be ratified. So, Mr. Speaker, I do agree with you. I urge all members who are on boards to quickly submit their applications to the committee, and I urge the committee to fast-track the process, except that, Mr. Speaker, I want to plead with you, and this is a plea, that the 2 weeks is indeed quite, Mr. Speaker, quite a difficult timeline. Mr. Speaker, there are many members who are serving on boards, and there are many who are running their private companies. There are many who have their own private companies, they are serving on boards. Mr. Speaker, I know someone who runs a big haulage company, a very big haulage company in this chamber. I say I know somebody who runs a very big haulage company. And I know somebody who runs financial institutions. I'm not even looking in the direction of that person, Mr. Speaker. But I know somebody who runs financial institutions. And some run radio stations, TV stations. Mr. Speaker, as you will know, the facilities and remuneration of members in relation to their responsibilities places an obligation on members to pursue their private careers even as they sit in this chamber. So almost everybody is either running a private business or is serving on a board or is a minister or some other vocation, Mr. Speaker. And so there are lawyers, there are doctors, they are practicing, there are pharmacists, there are engineers, there are architects. Mr. Speaker, I plead with you to extend the time a bit so that we will all be able to apply, because your committee chairperson will not be able, in my candid opinion, to really deal with all the applications within 2 weeks. So mine is a plea, Mr. Speaker, if you could review the time frame within which members should submit their application. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I agree entirely with you that we need to strengthen this House. We need to, as much as possible, remove the opportunities and the temptation for conflict of interest and executive overlap, or, the executive engulfing the entire legislature, and then the legislature losing its capacity to be independent. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, I've listened attentively to the submissions of your leaders, but I find it difficult to accept that members need more than 2 weeks to submit forms. To submit the forms to the committee for assessment. I'm not saying you should get the certificate within 2 weeks, but you have 2 weeks.
Thank you. If it is just the submission, Mr. Speaker, I don't think we'll have a problem.
2 weeks to submit
2 weeks is sufficient,
the
Mr. Speaker.
forms to the committee on profit. They definitely will need some time to assess and investigate, to be able to recommend to the Speaker, not approve. They don't have any power to approve. To recommend to the Speaker. It's the Speaker who will grant the permission after due approval. You want to contest that? Again, let's look at the concept in the Constitution. I listened to the minority leader. Let's look at the concept in the Constitution, where it is Parliament that exercises oversight over all those boards, public boards, and the same members of Parliament go to sit there and then report back to the House, come and participate, and then oversee what they have done over there. The principle of the law is clear. What is not specifically prohibited by the law is permitted by the law. But when it's specifically prohibited by the law, it's caught within that prohibition. And so, I, for example, as majority leader in 2009, when I was offered the position to be Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, I rejected it because I could not subsume the authority of a majority leader, the leader of the House, as a minister to be under the dictates and directive of the executive. So I have always argued against the majority leader of the House, being a minister of state. People disagreed with me, and they continued. Today, I was offered to be chair of the National Health Insurance Authority, as you all know. Speakers chair it. I rejected it because I think it's not proper to go and chair the board, submit reports under the supervision of a minister. The speaker is now under a minister, and the report will come to the House, and the House will now be presided over by the minister, the speaker. And I said no. I rejected it. But that's what used to happen. Some of you don't know. That is not proper. You cannot go and chair the boards, the corporations, work over there, submit reports through the minister. The minister submits the report to Parliament. Then you come and preside over those reports and approve or disapprove. Please, issues of conflict of interest, prejudice arise. I have no problem with any member testing the matter in court. That is what the courts are there for. But I'm very clear in my mind that the step I've taken